sometimes your emergency is limited to just your household. Sometimes your emergency is something that you have scheduled on the calendar, like a surgery. Today I am 3 days post-op, and I'm going to be splicing in some clips of me as I was in the process of recovering, and I am still actively recovering from an abdominal surgery. And I'm going to give you my thoughts on how your emergency preps that you have for big catastrophic emergencies can absolutely serve you for a mini emergency like a scheduled surgery or an unscheduled injury. If you're new here, hi, my name is Brecky, and this is Sustainable Prepping, where we empower through preparedness. And I'm going to show you my actual lived experience of having a surgery, and as a mom of four, how the preps that I've already had in place have been helping us to get through it. Not ideal lighting, but I wanted to give you a little bit of an update. Today is surgery day. I'm home, and I am definitely recovering. It's pouring, and there's thunderstorms. One of the things I want to remind people is that just because something is not a national disaster or an international disaster doesn't mean there's not many emergencies in your life. I ended up having to have a surgery that was more extensive than we anticipated, and so I'm out of commission. And I'm out of commission on a day when thunderstorms are rolling in and we could lose power. So I want you to reflect upon what you need for your own emergencies. Just because they're not national ones, they're not going to make the news, doesn't mean they aren't legitimate emergencies. I'll talk more about it when I'm not on like 3 different drug medications, but personal emergencies are still emergencies, and you should be prepared for all of them. So we are about not quite 24 hours post-op. I had an abdominal surgery, a laparoscopic abdominal surgery, and I'm going to be laid out for at least 3 days in bed, and then probably the next week kind of moving slow. I can't lift more than 10 pounds for at least 2 to 3 weeks. I can't get back to my regular workout schedule for at least a month. It's tough. Now, I knew this was coming, even though there was a kind of a, not an emergency aspect, but certainly an urgency aspect that I was going to need to have this surgery. I had it on my calendar. We knew it was coming. But this is coming off at the heels of quite a bit of storming and flooding in my area in north central North Carolina. But I really want us to talk more about preparedness. We often think of as big national and international disasters, but sometimes it's your family is facing a mini crisis, a mini disaster, like someone in your family needing surgery, and the cost of that, right? Even after our pretty good health insurance, our copay is like $1,400. It's very expensive, but this was a needed surgery. So the financial cost of a mini crisis, there is the cost of like lost labor, if you will, because I can't do anything for the next week. The fact that I'm lucid right now is kind of amazing. I have terrible lighting because I am in bed. My abdominal muscles hurt. My insides hurt a lot. I have to take some pretty heavy drugs for the next 2 days just to kind of manage the pain, so I'm not thinking as clearly as I want to. And my husband is managing the children by himself, which is hard. He's working. He's going to go back to work tomorrow. But we, as preppers, are prepping for the unplanned disasters, whether natural disasters like storms or fires, or man-made disasters like, I don't know, cyber attacks or infrastructure failure. But we forget that you can have your own personal crisis. You might have to have a surgery that lays you up for a week or longer. You might have an illness that knocks you off your feet. Heaven forbid you got something like long COVID where you could have months of side effects. The point that I want to make, and some recommendations I'm going to give you once I get on the other side of this, is that preparedness can't just be about that big, massive, grid down, everything falls apart, because yes, that is something we prepare for. But these little blips, a personal crisis like a surgery or an illness or a job loss, or someone who needs to come and stay with you for a little while. All of that is emergency preparedness. It's all emergency preparedness. So yes, this was an emergency that my family knew was coming, was on the calendar for 2 months before I had my surgery. But we're still having to respond to me being helpless, basically, and how we're going to manage all of that. Community is really important. Our churches have been amazing, and we have a meal train coming tonight and Thursday and Friday, or Saturday. So we only have to think about meals a couple times, right? So the day before my surgery, I made a big thing of barbecue chicken and mac and cheese and things like that so that my husband didn't have to think about dinner yesterday. We have a meal train coming tonight. We'll have leftovers on Wednesday. We'll have a meal train coming on Thursday, and then we can have pizza on Friday, another meal train on Saturday, and leftovers on Sunday. So we relied on our community. Our community is showing up for us in small but meaningful ways. So I really just want to reiterate that just because something isn't a regional or national or international disaster doesn't mean it's not a disaster for you. And just because it's the kind of emergency or crisis or hiccup that you have some advanced notice about doesn't mean that it isn't going to be, doesn't mean that it's not going to be difficult and that you're going to have a cakewalk. What you need to think about is how can you plan enough in advance for your own recovery? What can you be doing to set yourself up for the best success from a surgical recovery or something similar? And what can you do to plan for those unplanned illnesses and things like that? How is the prepping layers that you are already creating, how can they benefit you for a crisis like this? Like I said, I'm a little bit too out of it to do a more methodical set of recommendations. They're coming, but I wanted to let you guys check in. I'm trying to do a few walks around every day just to keep all of my insides from, I don't know, going septic or whatever. I'm on all the meds. Everything hurts. But that's kind of life sometimes. I'll check in with you guys soon. So it is post-surgery day 3. I'm in day 3 of recovery, and I wanted to give you some of my more coherent thoughts now that I'm off the heaviest of the recovery medications. Like I've said before in the sort of earlier clips, you can't just assume that your emergency is going to be one of those big national, regional catastrophes. Small emergencies happen all the time, emergencies that only affect your family. And while we had my surgery on the calendar, we knew it was going to knock me out. The lived experience of having mom knocked out is really hard, right? I have 4 kids and my younger 2 are very busy. Unfortunately, my husband came down with a brutal case of bronchitis like a week before I went in for surgery. Not enough time for us to really reschedule my surgery, and he's really struggled. Luckily, we had a lot of things in place. So one of the things I want to remind people is that your preps aren't just stuff. Sometimes they're people. We have a wonderful church community. We're Christians or Presbyterians, and our church community has been providing us with a meal train every other day so that we don't have to think about food. So I made a big meal the night before I went into surgery so that they had plenty of leftovers, and then every other day we've been getting a nice giant meal, and we are just eating it for 2 nights, and it's providing us with plenty of stuff. So sometimes your preps are your people, they're your community, and you shouldn't overlook them, particularly when you're making plans for shorter term crises or emergencies. The second thing that I want to bring up is that your preps that will serve you for that unnamed threat can absolutely be repurposed when you have a known crisis. So for example, I keep a ton of chicken broth on hand. Now, usually I home can it. I haven't been able to do that over the last several months because I've been really busy. So when chicken broth went on sale after the holidays, I bought like 3 flats of cans of chicken broth from Costco. I've been drinking chicken broth and eating saltines because that's about all that I can stomach, right? I didn't have to go out and buy that. I didn't have to pay that higher price point because I had it. Because I had it ahead of time for needing to have a thick pantry, right? For the potential of an economic downturn, for the potential of job cuts or anything like that. I already had it in my pantry, and now I'm able to repurpose it to use it for this mini crisis that our family is facing. Your family's probably not having a crisis right now, but mine is having a mini crisis. So that's been really useful to see about how that pantry preparedness, how having that working pantry is really serving us right now. The third thing that I would say is really useful is the fact that we have a super amazing medical kind of closet kit that we've got. My wounds have been fine. I am very, very fortunate that my incisions are not infected, which is really, really good. However, my surgery was way more extensive than we planned. For those of you who are curious, TMI moment, dudes, you might want to cover your ears for the next 30 seconds. I have endometriosis, and I had to have 6 lesions cut out, which is like 3 times as much as they expected. It was non-malignant, which is great. We were making sure there was no cancer, but it was extensive. And so my recovery is actually going to be longer because I had to have more cut out of my body. Well, okay, right? I have plenty of Tylenol. I have plenty of ibuprofen that I'm taking on, swapping, you know, every 3 hours. I've got heating pads. I've got cold packs. I have got special dressings for wounds if anything gets yucky. I have rehydration powders, and, you know, like I keep tins of Gatorade, the powder kind that you can mix together, so that I don't have to go out to the store and buy it prepackaged, right? I already had all of that. I have plenty of stuff to deal with the side effects of narcotics and anesthesia. If you know, you know, right? I had everything I needed for that. And having all of that means that all I had to think about was what were the unique things I needed for this surgery, and what did I need to do to make sure that while I was out of commission, the family was okay. So like I did a massive deep clean of our house right before I went into surgery so that we were starting at like super clean. And so while mom was out of commission, if it got a little bit less while dad was in charge, we were okay, right? I could do that because I wasn't having to run around and spend my energy and my kind of emotional bandwidth and my time and my money on things like buying more Tylenol and buying more, you know, a heating pad and things like that. This is how the preps that I have in place for an unknown disaster, right, a potential grid down situation, is actually helping me with I have the lights on right now, I'm laying on my couch, a full grid on situation, but one that has caused a mini crisis for us. I'll be honest with you, I was really hoping that by day 3, I'd be feeling a lot better than I'm feeling. I still feel like someone has ripped out my insides, which they have. So, I mean, it's accurate. It just feels really uncomfortable. All of this is just a good reminder that your preps that you have for floods, for fires, for evacuations, for civil unrest, for hurricanes, for tornadoes, all of those preps that you have, they can still serve you when it's something like a surgery, right? They can still serve you when it's something like a job loss. They can still serve you when it's something like an injury, where a member of your family might be out of commission and the crisis might be located to just your house and not the whole neighborhood or the whole town or the whole state. Your preps should always be able to serve you, no matter the emergency you're in. And the more familiar you are with them, the more comfortable you are with using them and where they're stored and how they're used, the better off you're going to be, no matter what you're facing. Friends, comment down below and let me know what your favorite tips for surgery recovery are. Right now, I would be taking any of your personal home remedies for feeling better after a surgery, and what are the preps that you would absolutely want to have on hand if you knew surgery was coming, or if you didn't know and you wanted to just keep them by anyway. In our house, my heating pad has been my very best friend, along with our rotating of ibuprofen and acetaminophen. Like, that rotation has been a lifesaver. All right, y'all, I've tuckered myself out. So until the next video, happy prepping.